Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, Northeastern Ohio. You are listening to the voice of Geauga, where every Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., you'll be enlightened, entertained, and informed. And this morning I have a particular item for all those people who are interested in the property tax situation. I haven't talked to Jonathan about this yet, but in any case, I've got Jonathan Broadbent with me this morning. And
Good morning,
if
all.
you're listening to the program and you want to take part, or if you're on Rumble, you can always, or Facebook or YouTube, we are live streaming, and you can always take part by uh, throwing a chat in the chat window. If you want to talk to us live or talk to our radio audience, you can call 440-946-9468. You can always email us at voiceofjaga@gmail.com. We want to do a shout out to Red EFT, one of our sponsors. If you have, and I just sent a promo to our production guys. They did a really nice job, the Red EFT guys. But if you want to solve a problem you've got with a tree falling over, limbs falling off your tree, you just want to visit with some really nice guys, call Red EFT or text them 440-850-4968. If I caught you without a pencil, let me read it one more time. 440-850-4968. We also want to do a shout out to the VFW in Chardon and Middlefield and the American Legion. All veterans stop into the Legion Hall or the VFW and buy a veteran a beer, pat him on the back, tell them thank you. They're all nice guys. And I want to, real quick before we get into our program, formal program topic, there was an announcement made by the Ohio Tax, that's the property tax guys, and there's an official announcement that they're making, and that is on April 23rd. The official committee to abolish property tax is hosting a press conference to announce the number of signatures collected to date. Their petition to amend the property tax Ohio Constitution to abolish all real property tax requires 413,000. What is it? 413,000. I've got the number here.
And change.
And some change.
Something north of that.
Yes. And so they're going to be making an announcement on the 23rd on Thursday. It's 413,488 valid signatures. And the deadline to submit those, if we wanted to get it on the November ballot, is July 1st. If we just want to carry on and put it on next year, we can continue collecting the signatures. There is only one person in the state of Ohio that knows the number, and that's Brian Massey. He's one of the co-founders of Axe Ohio. There's 5,000 volunteers across the state of Ohio collecting signatures. I will say Geauga County, we're behind. One of the, I don't want to say requirements, but one of their objectives was to get so many per county. And for a conservative county like Geauga County, I'm in shock that we haven't maxed out this important issue. And it is important. And from my perspective, in my opinion, doing away with property tax will solve a lot of problems. We will not lose police, contrary to the fearmongers out there. We will not lose townships. We will not lose libraries. We will be able to fund schools. Don't panic, people. The government always has lots and lots of ways to tax you. Property tax is the most corrupt and complex of the systems, of the options that are out there. So don't panic. And so I'm personally hoping that we get the signatures and we get this on the ballot and we get this passed. Ohio is constantly ranked in the top 10 or 15th highest property taxes in the nation. And the Ohio taxpayers are at a breaking point. That's all coming from Brian. There's a lot more in the press conference. Or in the announcement. I'll post the announcement on our website so people can see what the announcement is. But I think that's good news. We're going to be making an announcement, and I'm hoping and praying that everything goes in the direction of those of us who want to eliminate property tax so we can start creating a more transparent, more functional, less complex taxing system. Or it doesn't even have to be taxes, could be fees. I guess fees are called taxes. So, so that was the announcement. In any case, we're going to be talking today about what, Jonathan? You brought the topic up.
We're going to be talking about brainwashing.
Brainwashing.
And brainwashing happens on both sides.
And we're going to
They've
be
had,
brainwashing some people today. Is that what you're saying?
nope, they're going to be undoing the brainwashing. That is a big part of the purpose of Voice of Geauga.
Wouldn't it be
They're
just
finding,
easier if we brainwash people? I mean, it'd be much easier. We could be a
it,
CNN or an MS Now or one of those organizations that promote bad information. We could do that.
we could, but a few things. I wouldn't be excited about that. Working diligently each and every day to be a good Christian and trying to find truth, that would be the opposite. So that would be spreading misinformation and harmful disinformation, which is antithetical to Christian mission. So, plus, I wouldn't really enjoy it, and I have no idea how to do that. I have no training, no background, and no interest in brainwashing people. But I have read lots of things and watched lots of videos and gone through some training on how to identify propaganda, and I hope to bring more people's attention to what propaganda looks like, and hopefully we can get some people on both sides of the political aisle, left, right, center, independent, conservative, liberal, progressive. For heaven's sakes, I'd love it. The world would be a better place if we had less misinformation happening out there. By the way, Skip, you mentioned Axe Ohio Tax. It took me a moment to find it. I actually was spelling out Axe, but or I was spelling out Axe and Ohio. There is a website for anybody that wants to know more about Axe Ohio Tax. I have no idea why, but they spelled Axe AX. There's no E. It's AXOHTAX.com. It took me a moment to find that because I was spelling out Ohio and the word axe. So it is AXOHTAX.com. You can go there and check things out. If you want to sign, you can click on your county and find out where people are holding petitions that you can stop in and sign. I think that there have been petitions available for signature in various spots throughout Geauga County. You can find them at that website. So, Skip, here's my thought. We talk a lot on the conservative side of things about the just crazy insanity, the bizarre wackiness of what we see on the left. And again, just for purposes of simplification for today's conversation, I'm going to boil things down to sort of the left versus the right. I know that doesn't always fit. There's no easy way of describing the spectrum of sort of political leanings and perspective, but I'm going to use COVID as
You could also call on the
an
right
example.
and the right and the wrong.
The right and the wrong. That would, I think, in many instances, that would apply as well. So, in looking at the left and right, there are a lot of people all across the political spectrum who fell victim to propaganda during COVID. There are a lot of people who thought that if you wore a mask and then you wore two masks, and if you did 6 feet of social distancing, and if you drove in your car with your mask, and if you went for walks, if you swam with a mask on, but then lowered it enough to like take bites, and then remember if you sat in a restaurant, COVID apparently it didn't hover in the air below like 4 feet, so you could take your mask off if you were eating, but if you stood up, you had to put all the insanity that just broke people's brains. It broke brains all across the nation and the world, and that's propaganda. Propaganda works in a way that it clouds your judgment. It makes you think things are true that aren't, and it often it's reversed later because people came back and were like, "Oh, whoops, we were completely wrong about all this stuff." And remember when the jab was supposed to be 100% effective, and then it was 80, and then it was 70, and then it was 30, and then it was 10, and then it's like, well, it's an ameliorant. It'll make you feel a little bit better, but it doesn't really stop anything and it doesn't stop the spread. So they backpedaled it all the way to pretty much zero in effectiveness of that shot. That what we saw play out on the public stage in a massive global way is propaganda. It is lies and manipulation. So we point out, Skip, often that we see things on the left. There was a long period of time where we were told that police and military are the bad guys. Remember, defund the police? That was based on fiction. There were all kinds of lies that were used to pitch the public on the idea that police are bad guys. It's happening again with a division of our police. I see we're coming up on a break. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm hoping to set the stage here quickly, and then we can dive into where there's propaganda happening and where there's lies, brainwashing, and manipulation on both the right and the left side of the political spectrum. You're listening to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool, myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Remember, you can join us on social media, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. Also call in 440-946-9468. More on the other side of the break.
So for our listening audience, just as a teaser, a heads up, I'm going to be testing here shortly, doing a live on-site radio program from Rise and Dine Restaurant in Chesterland, Ohio. And so they've got a back room that we can produce the show from and invite people in. And once I run the test, confirm that it's going to work and so forth, we'll promote that, and people can show up, be on the radio live, be there, see us, talk to us, and we'll be talking to the restaurant audience, just the people that show up every day, all the old farts that talk politics. Some are Democrats, some are Republicans, but we're going to get into it with whoever shows up at the restaurant. So that should be fun. And if you want to take part, then you can show up. And if you happen to be one of those people that disagree with us, show up. You can disagree with us. Don't shout, and so forth. But we'll have one of the restaurant guys that are pretty big deal with you.
Yeah, there you go. No, I wouldn't expect problems there. Generally speaking, I think that restaurant and places like it around Geauga County are full of what I consider to be real Democrats. The real ones who are able to talk to you and just look you in the eye and say, I disagree. Here's my perspective. I'd like to see this happen instead of that. And they'll ask questions and actually listen to your answer. Those are what I call
30 seconds.
Real Democrats. We may disagree on some stuff, but they're willing to talk. Today's far left, the leftists, they're just are bonkers. They start banging pots and pans together, blowing whistles and screaming in your face.
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Today we're talking about brainwashing, lies, and propaganda. There's a great comment from Nana Sherrill in the Rumble chat. So much propaganda, yes, on both sides. It's enough to make your head spin continuously. Twilight Zone.
Okay, Jonathan, I have to throw one out at you because you're not watching Facebook. I'm watching all the comments coming across all three channels, and we have a friend out there. This is a perfect example. It fits the show today. Warmongering feline pedo supporters. I think they are trying to say pedophile. I'm not, they can't spell, but all that aside, and I think they're trying to say felons, pedophile supporters say what? And so they're attempting to call us names, and which is
wow,
we're warmongers,
so
felons, and pedophile supporters. Even though there's no support for any of that, but keep it up, Stu. I love it. Keep it coming.
Oh, so Stu is dropping comments. So he's trying to.
Stu is trying to stir the pot, and I love it. Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah,
it fits right into the propaganda, mindless people. What
So
Vladimir
Stu,
Lenin used to call them useful idiots, but that's all right. Go ahead.
so Stu, it should Stu would benefit from reading a copy. I don't have it within arm's reach, but here in my office I have a copy of The Art of the Smear. The Art of the Smear is a really important read for anybody that's interested in this subject. It explains why we see and hear a lot of what we come across in today's media. And there's some video out there of Nancy Pelosi on stage. I think she may have had some cocktails at the time. She looked a little bit wobbly. But anyway, she was somewhere making the comment that the smear is a tremendously successful political tactic. You just come out with an allegation against somebody. You just tell them, you just go out to the press, make friends in the press, and tell them something spurious, that somebody's had an affair, or that they attack people, or they harm animals or whatever. Make something up, have them publish it, and then a week later ask the paper to issue a retraction. But they do it on like page 6. Meanwhile, other papers pick up on it. Did you see that the New York Times has issued this article, and the article casts major allegations against this political person, and they harm animals and abuse people, and they're a sexual pervert and deviant and everything. Meanwhile, none of it's true, and they have the retraction to point to, but the retraction is buried and nobody talks about it. So then politicians, the media, the news media, television, CNN, all of them will act as if that's truth. So that's what we have in that comment that Skip was reading. So we have all these allegations. We have P-gate. Remember that Trump supposedly peed on a hotel bed somewhere. We have all these allegations. And anybody who keeps a tally and actually cares about trying to find the truth can go back. And I actually have a huge checklist. It's about 75 things on it. Remember, and Trump is everybody's favorite topic all over the world. Remember when Trump supposedly used tear gas to clear a street because he wanted to go in and into a church? And remember when he supposedly grabbed the wheel in the Beast and tried to steer the vehicle? All of that was retracted, and but still there are people out there whose brains have been clouded, and they treat it as if that's the truth. Or I think in some instances it's even worse. They don't care what the truth is. They are so angry at the world and at Trump and at politicians that they just continue to spout off about things that are not true. But the point of today's episode is to highlight the fact that this is not only happening on the left. It's easy for me, it's easy for us, and probably most of our listeners, to point out the complete and disastrous hypocrisy of many of the positions on the left, being clearly opposed to government transparency, to lowering taxes, to fighting for accountability in public education, to supporting our men and women, if police and military, and other first responders. The left have been brainwashed into thinking these anti-American thoughts, that they're against police, they're against education in many, many ways, and that stems from brainwashing. But on our side, it happens as well. So I'm going to finish this example and then flip it over to Skip for some comments. But I mentioned a few days ago, I was door knocking for a political candidate, and I went up to a door and had a very lovely conversation with an elderly woman who has voted Republican her entire life and is excited about, or would normally be excited about, the upcoming May 5th primary elections. However, she expressed grave concern to me, telling me that she's not sure that she'll be able to vote because she has been married twice. The implications of that are jaw dropping. She is responding to propaganda. What's happened is at the national level, there's some discussion, has been some discussion about trying to rein in the corruption within our election systems and trying to do a much better job. We have to do a much better job of making sure that the people who are able to cast votes are actually, truly, indeed legitimate US citizens. Nothing has changed. And from everything I was able to understand, this is a woman who's been a Geauga resident for many decades, hasn't changed recently, and she didn't recently marry. She's been married in her second marriage for at least 10 years. She's voted, but she thought now thinks, based on what she's hearing and seeing, that because she's been married twice, that she, as a woman, now has some sort of issue with her maiden name versus her married name. It's a non-issue. It took me a while to talk her down from the fence and convince her, yes, absolutely, go in and vote. You can still. That's brainwashing, and it happens on both sides of the aisle. What do you think, Skip?
So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic, brainwashing. We tend to get into our camps, our tribes. Now, certain people are wired a little differently. You and I are wired a little differently that way. You and I get into pretty robust discussions, debates, disagreements, if you will. And because we care about the truth, we care about, everybody's got their perspective on things, and where that perspective comes from is, life's experiences and the information you collect and so on and so forth. You and I spend a lot of time being immersed in um, trying to collect good information. I always test myself and I test the facts to the extent that I can. Sometimes it's hard, but there are people that don't do that. They go to the Democratic headquarters and they listen to the propaganda being spewed by some person that's in front of the room. Same thing on the Republican side. They'll listen to commentary coming from their tribe, their group, and then they take that as fact and walk away with it, and they don't use critical thinking and go through, is that good information, bad information, so forth. And so a lot of that comes out of good intent. They're not evil people, although there are some evil people out there who just want to name call. They just emotionally are so wrapped up in their beliefs that they if they got nothing else, they'll just scream and yell at you. And in my view, they just lost. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm watching our chat windows, and somebody said that one of our commissioners, Miss Brakey, is out there bad mouthing Steve Olowich and Abby King. And so there are people in her tribe that will just take what she says for granted and run with it. I don't know how many people follow her, but it's that sort of thing where we all tend to speak to our group and try to convey what we believe, hoping that they believe it, and then run off and then they act upon it. And so I encourage everybody that's listening to this program. Jonathan and I are going to tell you stuff. Go do your own homework. Test what we're saying, and to the extent that we can, I know both Jonathan and me work really hard to try and validate the information we have. I've done a tremendous amount of homework on this property tax thing to know for myself whether I should support that or not. But there are people that just shout out or put out information, and the people in their tribes just run with it. And that's a lot where this comes from. That the whole brainwashing thing, when you think about it, is just people who accept some belief system and then act on that belief system. By the way, somebody asked a question in our chat window. Is there any way to halt a new Chardon Library building? I'm not a big fan of all of that because of what I know about the library system levies and how those came about and so forth. The answer to that question is yes. And I heard a comment the other day by a commentator that our republic is a participation, is designed to be a participant sport. We've got to be involved. If you want good government, then you have to be involved. And so, whatever you believe, either way, you have to be involved and engaged, because if you're not, then you'll be ruled by others. That's a Plato thing. Those who fail to engage in politics will be ruled by their inferiors. And so if you want to change that, the library is all the decisions are made by a board. The board is appointed by other offices. You can go to board meetings, you can express yourself, you can take 50 people with you and express yourself. If you care enough about it, if you're passionate enough about it, you can be heard, and that will change the direction. If you're not, we're having an election coming up. If people like the establishment, the status quo, then don't do anything. Don't put out signs. Don't talk to anybody. Don't
We're
help
coming up on a
people.
break,
So
Skip. I need to step in. We're going to continue this conversation about brainwashing and propaganda on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
All right. I'm going to come back with some comments about this. I don't know that I ever look at this. I think maybe once or twice I've looked at this. Carolyn Brakey, Geauga County Commissioner, Carolyn Brakey, paid for by Better with Brakey. So Carolyn Brakey has she has a personal Facebook page, and then she has one that is connected to her campaign for commissioner. And I assume that at some point she'll run, and it looks to me, based on her the photo ops that she takes advantage of, and just constantly trying to be in front of ribbon cuttings and all those sorts of things, that she has her sights set on some higher office. That's my guess. My instincts tell me that she's viewing misbehaving as a county commissioner as a stepping stone to something else. Who knows what that may be. But I'm looking at this page, and one of the first questions that everybody should be asking is the moment you see that paid for by Better with Brakey, who is that? Who is paid for by Better with Brakey? Because that's other people's money. And people might be tempted to read that and see Carolyn Brakey's picture. And if they like Carolyn Brakey, oh, well, there's Carolyn Brakey expressing an opinion about politics and politicians and people running. She's got, once again, she's dredged up this T-shirt. I think there were 14 of these little T-shirts made a year ago as some sort of inside joke having to do with Steve Olowich's campaign. And that apparently is all she's got on Steve Olowich. These are silly little spin-off T-shirts that 14 people got, and she's posting 42 minutes ago. She posted again on that ridiculous T-shirt, as if that's really all that's what's important in Geauga. Well, anyway, that's a side note. There's a funding apparatus. This group, Brakey for Commissioner, or Better with Brakey, they call themselves. That group gets funding. They get money from people, organizations, whatever it is. When she was running for office, I know a lot of people got outraged that I took the time to actually look at her campaign finance reports and point out who's paying for this stuff. If she is expressing an opinion, it's incumbent upon us. It's a primary step one to ask the question, whose opinion is that? Carolyn Brakey, is that your opinion, or is that somebody else's? Because if there are strings attached to it, if there's money flow behind it, there's an argument to be made, and a challenge question that must be issued. Is that truly your opinion? And let me put it a little finer point on that. Let's say that, who knows at this point, I haven't looked at her campaign finance report in a while. Let's say that Commissioner Brakey is now sitting on $10 million that's flowed into her Better with Brakey campaign.
30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Who has put that money in? Who is behind the $10 million? And isn't it likely that those people would tell her, like this person, don't like that person, support this issue, veto that one? That's politics, and people that don't pay attention to it. And
10 seconds, 10 seconds.
welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Today we're talking about brainwashing and propaganda. I got into a little bit of a rant during the break, and I'm going to highlight it again for our radio listening audience. Somebody in the comments that Skip pointed out made reference to Geauga County Commissioner Carolyn Brakey. Carolyn Brakey, if you're not aware, she has two profiles on Facebook. One is her personally, and she may express opinions and talk about things. And, if you like Carolyn Brakey or are interested in what she has to say, you might follow her. And that's a personal Facebook page. Separate from that, she has a political Facebook page, and it's paid for by Better with Brakey. It says so right in the big banner across the top. Anybody who's interested in whatever Carolyn Brakey has to say as a primary initial first step in evaluating the truth and accuracy of things that she says and actions that she takes must be asking the question, who is paid for by Better with Brakey? Because if there's money behind it, isn't it fair to ask the question, what influence is that money having on you? And I haven't looked at her campaign finance report in a while. I did a few years ago. There were some people that got outraged that I bothered to look at her campaign finance report and see who's funding her. But this holds true. It absolutely holds true for all elected officials. We talk often about how these people in Washington, D.C., and many of them in Columbus, Ohio, should wear NASCAR type jackets with patches on them to show who's funding them and where the money's coming from. So we can start to get a better sense. If they are backing big pharma, or if they are in the pocket of some institution or organization, we should know. We've talked many times about Jim Dvorak. Jim Dvorak, in his past and maybe present, I don't know, has strong connections to unions, and I believe most of them are outside of Geauga County. Based on my initial looks at Carolyn Brakey, and I'm using them as examples. I'm not saying this is the end of the conversation, it's the beginning of the conversation. When Carolyn Brakey first ran for commissioner, I noticed and highlighted the fact that there are some outside law firms that spent a lot of money supporting and encouraging, endorsing Carolyn Brakey. I continue to ask the question, what influence does that have? If there is, and I just threw out a hypothetical arbitrary number, let's say that $10 million has flooded into her Better with Brakey campaign. Personally, I think she has her sights set on higher office. I base that assumption on her behavior. She's constantly in front of the camera, trying to make herself look good, and I see very little interest in actually fighting for and advocating for we the people of Geauga. For that reason, I think she's probably collecting more money and trying to position herself for run for a different office. But to back to the point, back to the comment. If you're scrolling through and somebody noticed it, that she's posting on candidates. She has a ridiculous post going back to this isn't even, it doesn't even rise to the level of jaywalking. But she's calling out this minor little incident that happened with T-shirts a year ago. 14 people got these goofy, silly T-shirts, and that's the highlight of her profile under Better with Brakey. But the point is, sorry, that's a tangent. The point is, if you're reading that and choosing to follow it, but you're not asking yourself and her campaign, who is behind it? Are there people with money telling you who to vote for, who not to vote for, what issues to rubber stamp, which ones to veto, what influences your decisions and the posts that you make? Ask that of everybody. We know it's happening on CNN and MSNBC. They're majority sponsored, I believe, still by Big Pharma. So when you try to ask for legitimate questions around pharmaceuticals and those sorts of things, don't expect to get legitimate answers from places like CNN and MSNBC. They're influenced. That steers toward propaganda. I've monopolized a big chunk of time there. What are your thoughts, Skip?
Oh, sorry, I gotta wake up.
Very funny.
So yeah, Miss Brakey, so funny. Um, uh, there's some comments I'd love to make, but the one thing, the last time that I looked at her campaign finance reports, there was a lot of money coming from outside of the county, Geauga County. When I ran
Right.
against her, I pointed that out. Now, apparently, people didn't care that there was a lot of outside the county influence. Same thing with Jim Dvorak and with some other candidates, by the way. So if you care about Geauga County, you ought to be looking at the campaign finance reports for various people that are running. In my case, I didn't take any money from anybody. Well, that's not true. I took money from one person, but which who forced it on me. But there's influence that comes with that money, and if it comes from outside of the county, you got to ask, who are you serving? And
Right.
so, and that's the same question that I have to ask both Miss Brakey and Jim Dvorak and others. They sit on this NOACA board, and God forgive me, I know people hate it when I bring up NOACA. They think I've got this obsession. I do. I'll freely admit it because they're so corrupt. But they vote and go along with this bureaucratic organization in Cuyahoga County who openly professes that they're looking out for Cuyahoga County. So
Well,
who
Skip,
does
that's let's
Dvorak
hold
and
on, hold on,
Brisbraki
hold on.
serve when they're
Let's
sitting on
set
that
that.
board?
I
Go
think we need
ahead.
to set that aside for the moment because that doesn't directly relate to the brainwashing and influence
It
and the,
does. It directly
well,
relates.
no,
Because
in
where
a
does
different
some of
sort of
this
way. Let's save
brainwashing
that for
come from?
another conversation because what we're talking about now is the influence of money, campaign finance reports, and those sorts of things. When you get into seeking political power, that's a different equation for a different day.
Well, it
So,
comes into
what,
influence, and where does that money and influence come from? So if people are donating
where it might
from
steer
outside of
you,
the
I
county,
understand. But I think
so
that should be a standalone conversation for a different day. When we look at the um, when we look at things like campaign finance report, or I'll tell you what, make a note. I'm going to see if I can find it during the course of today's show, and I'll try and post it in the notes and comments. There's a group called Citizen Ninja, or it's part of Citizens for Free Speech. Citizens for Free Speech, which for a period of years had both Bob Wood and, or Patrick Wood, excuse me, Patrick Wood and Bob France associated with it, and some great people around here. I don't know if he wants his name mentioned on air, but Dan H., this is a tip of the hat to you. We had some great people advocating for free speech, and connected to that, they had a whole training program on how to spot propaganda. It's still available on the website if you go to citizensforfreespeech.org and click through. I think it's called Citizen Ninja. You can do a training thing. Show your kids. And for heaven's sakes, there are actually great resources out there unexpectedly from some generally pretty far left organizations. I think Harvard University has one, Pew Research Foundation, a bunch of those. Find the find the ways to spot propaganda and start calling it out. So you can spot the propaganda directly from the things that are fed to you and to be able to understand why, when somebody is trying to influence you in an inappropriate or wrong way. And looking at the money, because I'm ex Wall Street, I'm a finance guy. A big part of what I do when I'm not on this radio show is follow the money stuff, and it invariably leads to the corruption. If you do a good job of following the money, you can understand why the propaganda exists. In the case of our politicians in Columbus, Ohio, we did a report. It was actually Linda Harvey, a friend of mine, did a report showing that of all the states in the union, Ohio is one of the most influenced. Our legislature is one of the most influenced by teachers union money. And just by way of example, one of the state one of the state school board seats about 5 or 6 years ago went for just under $100,000. Now imagine if you were maybe a retired teacher or something, or you were superintendent of a school, and you were thinking that you're going to run for this school board position. Nobody can compete with that. So when you have $100,000, and to these teachers unions, they have so much money that's like dropping a nickel in a bucket for them. To be able to buy that kind of power, to be able to buy that kind of influence, is not representative republic. That is not representative government. That is it's cronyism at its worst. So we're coming up on a break. We've got a minute and a half before the break here. You want to chime back in, Skip?
No, we're yes. So you caught me off guard there because we got just a few seconds before the break. But
Oh, a little over a
you know,
minute.
all of this comes to we're talking about outside influence and propaganda, and I know people don't like it when I bring up NOACA, but it is a king at propaganda, and so we've got people who are involved with that, and just the other day, somebody brought a piece of paper into the commissioner meeting that was provided at a township meeting. It is pure propaganda, and so I spoke to that. And so I see we're coming up out of the break, but that is a perfect example. It's all around us, and it's easy to point out and to take apart some of what we see in terms of the propaganda. Look at what's being promoted by the some of our elected officials regarding property tax. And
Oh yeah,
the property,
it's a great example.
the propaganda is over the top because all they can do is shout, "Oh, we're going to lose police, we're going to lose libraries." They won't even entertain a discussion about the other side of the coin, which
Fear mongering.
is
Remember, you
irresponsible.
can join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We'll come back with more on the other side of the break.
Cool cat looking for a kitty. Gonna look in every corner of the city. Till I meet. Mics are off. Mics are off.
Yeah, so one of the things that's just all too often missed as people, I think it's some pretty high level brainwashing. People lose sight of nuance, and people now, especially the younger generation, they just want to see things like shortcut answers. You don't see the nuance of issues. And an example it, for the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years has been a very prominent example when Khalid Namar, Dan Messina, and others have gotten together for Liberty Lounge. They used to do these Liberty Lounge. It was awesome. And they would talk about the importance and relevance of our founding documents, the freedoms that we enjoy, and all kinds of things around fighting for our republic to keep it so that we don't fall to social communism or whatever. But one of the things that Khalid in particular brought up is when you get into history and there's just this powder keg of conversation around racism and race relations and black and white. And I think we're constantly picked at and antagonized, and I think there's a reason for that. But you lose sight of all the nuance, all these stories. And Khalid would tell these amazing stories of like going back to the 1800s, where there were these people with muskets and stuff. And there was one. It was really cool. It was I think it was a mill.
30 seconds. 30
And
seconds.
there was some escaped slaves came and moved in. It was all white. They ended up joining this factory, and they became like a community. And these guys came into the to try and capture the slaves, and everybody grabbed their muskets, black and white, and
10
defended.
seconds. Peel back. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. We're talking about brainwashing and propaganda. And one of the things that I was mentioning during the break is how we seem to have lost the nuance, the subtleties, the gray areas of history and the world around us. And I think that's by design. And I think at a high level, that is high level brainwashing,
And,
especially in the younger generation. I'm almost through with this thought, and I'll flip it to you, Skip.
all right.
This younger generation feeling like they want shortcut answers. And it's like, everything's an emoji, a thumbs up and a smiley face, or a thumbs down and an angry face. But most things in life are full of nuance, and you lose that when you look for good versus bad shortcut answers. Right, Skip?
Yeah, and I want to point something out, and I'm going to use the property tax discussion of the forums that League of Women Voters put on as an example. So you have a person who is a person of position, the county auditor, who is looked to as an expert on the whole property tax thing. His office actually manages the property tax distribution and so on and so forth. And so he's looked at as somebody with credibility. And yet he can stand up in front of a crowd, and he's got an art. He's very articulate, very smart. I'll give that to him. But he's very good at twisting the situation or the numbers um, to paint a picture. And it's not necessarily an accurate picture. And I say that from this perspective. If if our elected officials, the county auditor being one, were to at least interject the other side of the argument into the equation and be able to um, talk about that intellectually, it would have he would have a lot more credibility. As it is, all that we can say is, oh, if we lose this property tax, it's gone, and then all these organizations are going to fail. The townships are going to fail, the police are going to fail, the libraries are going to fail. And
Fear
that's the
tactics.
argument. This is coming from a personal position. From my perspective, that's propaganda because and it's being somewhat disingenuous because there is another side to that story and nobody on that side is allowing that to be heard. That is propaganda. That is misleading or tainting the truth to the detriment of those people who are trying to make good decisions. They're trying to collect information. They attended this forum expecting they're going to hear from trusted people facts, and and again, from my opinion and my perspective, they did not hear facts. They heard completely one side of the story, and so that's really part of the challenge that we have from a propaganda standpoint, and that's coming from Republicans. He's a Republican, I think, at least he portrays himself to be. And so we do have an election coming up. I'll just mention that. So people want to consider all that.
I'm,
But that's
I'm
a
hoping
big
we end
part of
up
the
with,
picture is we have our elected officials, many of whom we want to trust. We want to trust them.
yeah,
But they're promoting information. It's the same thing with this whole data center thing we just talked about, right? Is you're
yeah,
going
that
to
was
hear
yesterday's
from
show.
the elected class a lot of information about data centers, some of which is not accurate, and it's very concerning.
Right, so let's put those two together as well. Once you start doing it, I think it becomes an addictive sort of a habit. When you're looking at the politicians who are backing and supporting these data centers, look at their campaign finance reports and look at the companies that are backing them. And if you can connect those dots and see that there are politicians, unfortunately, in Ohio who for years have been fighting medical freedom. So we know that we have Ohio advocates for medical freedom. I count Stephanie Stock among my friends. She's the woman spearheading that. And we have politicians who oppose it. Well, we've been able to track back and point out that many of them, including Speaker Huffman, are very, very funded by Big Pharma and mega hospital. Well, it's no wonder that they are opposing medical freedom in Ohio and right to try and those kinds of things. The same thing with data centers. As we're starting to see some of these supposed Republicans who are coming out in favor of and encouraging and supporting the expansion of these massive data centers, and then they're trying to sweep environmental concerns and community concerns under the rug and blow smoke. Gee, I wonder why. Look at their campaign finance reports. There's a great comment from Gardens of CH. We are not represented. We are swindled. Elected officials think it is their job to obfuscate to please the donor class. That is spot on, Gardens of CH. That is a major, major issue right now. And so I've been encouraging a grassroots return to civics and education, informing ourselves, having a network of people who are finding the truth and communicating the truth and doing it efficiently and effectively so that we can get out the vote and we can get better people in office. Skip mentioned that there's an election coming up. And he mentioned some supposed, I'm air quoting this, supposed Republicans who, gosh, isn't it strange that until about 5 minutes ago, they're lifelong progressive, far left liberal Democrats? Many of them have an R next to their name. Well, May 5th represents an opportunity to get rid of them and replace them with, I'd be delighted if one of the results of May 5th is more actual Republicans in the Republican Party. I would find that delightful, personally, because I can't find a single example in history that the people have benefited from single party rule. And right now, in my book, we're suffering under single party rule. There's nothing in me that is willing to acknowledge many of these local politicians as actually being Republican. And frankly, I can take it one step further. This is connected. Um, we have some people who got very involved in the Republican Party in Geauga County who spent the better part of a decade taking off all the guardrails and taking away all of the checks and balances and packing the Republican Party with a bunch of bad actors. These are people who are lifelong far left, ultra liberal, progressive Democrats. The Democrat Party loves that. Yay, we've got our people and our agenda on both sides of the aisle. Hooray, they're probably pumping their pom poms and doing a jig over there at 87 and whatever that is in Newberry, their headquarters. But it doesn't benefit we the people, not in the slightest. It's lies and propaganda, increasing taxes, deprivation, starvation, and all kinds of things connected to that. That hopefully lights a fire and motivates people to do a better job of finding and calling out propaganda. But if we can call it out, educate ourselves, and do a better job of voting for the things that we want, we'll keep Geauga Geauga.
Well, and
Let's get
we have to be on guard ourselves that we're and I see us coming up on the end of the program. It's supposed to be my last word. We have to be careful that what we're promoting is in fact true. I mean, oftentimes when we're advocating passionately against something, I'll use the data centers as an example. We make claims, oh, we're going to pour all this water back into the system and pollute the lakes and so on and so forth. May be true, may not be true. We have to be able to verify those facts so that when we're saying those kinds of things, we maintain our own credibility. So sometimes we're the victim of um, our own lack of information, and so we have to constantly
right.
be on guard and make sure that we've got our facts straight, and then we can promote our causes. And you and I, Jonathan, and many others are very passionate about trying to influence outcomes and influence where things are going. And so we speak out and we hope that we're going to make a difference. But you know, the whole brainwashing thing is complex, and we have to be on guard against that. Use your critical thinking. And with that, I'm going to flip it over to Jonathan to end the show.
Yeah, but that's the key right there. And I've been saying for years, we're starting to actually see some signs of speech and debate coming back to K through 12. I think that'd be delightful. Add back civics and bring back actual history, all of history, all the warts and all, bring history back into K through 12. We've corrupted our education system in the US right now. We've eliminated the vast majority of those things that are important and fundamental to build a next generation that's able to wind the way through this and find fact from fiction and to hopefully do a better job of avoiding propaganda and brainwashing. This has been another episode of Voice of Geauga. I hope everybody has a terrific weekend. We'll see you on Monday.